Since we have a lot of new folks today, just a little bit about who we are. We are the Tri-County Regional Energy Network, also known as 3C REN. We're a collaborative partnership between San Luis Obispo, Santa Barbara, and Ventura counties. 3C REN is funded by ratepayer dollars collected through the public goods charge found on our utility bills. And the benefit of being ratepayer funded is that there's no cost to those we serve, and we're able to bring those dollars back into our region. 3C REN currently offers 6 programs focused on 3 services: incentives, training, and technical assistance. Our training today is part of the Energy Code Connect program, and you can find additional trainings and learn more about our other services by visiting our website, 3c-ren.org. And with that, I'd like to introduce everyone to Mindy, who will be hosting today's forum.
Good morning, everybody. Nice to see all of you. Well, I guess I can't see all of you because we have so many folks today that we've done this as a webinar, which is a little different from some of our previous ones. We have a couple people, Danica, who have their hands up. I'm not sure if they're supposed to be panelists or not. We can also chat with them, so we know. So today is a really unprecedented moment for 3C REN. I've been doing this with them for many years, and we have over 320 registered attendees today. So that's why we're doing this a little bit differently. And so I'm going to do a little bit of a alignment on what that means. That means that we can't see all of your faces. And we're going to be more oriented to like getting our presentations, which are amazing, to all of you so you can get lots of great information. We will have 2 different spots in the day where we can have Q&A, and we're gonna use that Q&A function that is at the bottom of your screen. And I'll go a little bit more into that as we go forward. But just know that we are going to make sure that all of this interaction happens, and you will have access to these slides on the 3C REN website as always. And hopefully this will be a really exciting day for you. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. So we're on Zoom, as we all know. We're going to use that Q&A again on the bottom of your screen. And what I'm hoping that will do is, like, if you have a clarifying question, our folks are all going to be monitoring that, and they'll try to answer that in real time. If it's a substantive question, we're going to hold that until our moment when we're actually having the Q&A. So we'll have we've, as I mentioned, divided this in kind of 2 different chunks. So we're not ignoring you if we're not answering it immediately. We do just want to have that opportunity to chat with everybody on that. As you now know, it is going to be recorded, and you can share this out to friends and family, and they can come back and watch the entire thing, which will be great. And we will also share those slides, as I mentioned. All right, so just kind of want to go back one here. Who's in the so-called room here? And I want to just share that because I think that's always kind of interesting. Who's actually trying to attend here? So we have a lot of energy consultants, as you would expect. We have architects and designers, so that's a large group. We have HERS raters, engineers, government agency folks, and then we have a whole bunch of other, which includes everything from real estate to utility, CCA, staff, and homeowners who are all part of this. So this is a really dynamic, great, and diverse group, really showing how the Central Coast is really intrigued on this one topic. So great to see all of that. Let me just go a little bit over what our agenda is for today. I'm not going to spend a lot of time here. So we're going to start with Jennifer Rennick from Imbalance Green Consulting, and she's going to give us an overview of what these 2025 code updates look like. And that's going to be followed up by Amy Brousseau and RJ Witchett from from the CEC, who are going to talk about the goals and the metrics around the new goal and the new code. We'll then have a pause, as I mentioned, and have about 10 minutes to do some Q&A with those guys. And then we're going to switch into talking more about the specifics of how we implement this. So cheers, around the cheers registry updates, we'll have Mariko Morales part of that, and then HERS and rater changes with Paul Dunn. And then we'll finish up our conversation there with Gina Rhoda from Energy Code ACE. We'll then have another opportunity for some more questions, and then have some closing remarks at the end of all of that. Okay, and I think now we have a survey that we wanted to share with all of you. So if we can launch that, I know we had it a second ago.
The survey is live, and we've got about 64% of folks who have answered so far. So about 122 people.
Oh,
have
there we go.
answered.
It didn't just showed up on mine. Okay, great. This is great. So how we have 65% of you guys have been doing this, and there are several questions here. So the first one, what is your role in the building industry? So that's kind of helping us again, who's actually here in the room. How familiar are you with the energy code updates? And then what's your biggest challenge with energy code compliance? That may be too small of a set of questions. I'm sure all of you have many thoughts on that one. And then do you plan to pursue further training after this forum? So that's some good questions. So as I mentioned, I'll just start to sort of highlight some of these answers we're getting as they're coming in, and then we'll move on. As mentioned before in that pie chart, we have about 45% of our folks here are energy consultants, our engineers, inspector, plan checkers are strong, as well as our architects and engineers. And, today I think is going to be a good day in terms of getting everyone up to speed, because we have about 30% of you almost say you're not familiar at all with the 2025 code updates. So that's really important for us to know. And so all of my speakers, we're giving people a really good overview today. And then we have still about 60 plus people who are somewhat familiar. So, we have some kind of knowledge, but this is going to really help us to deepen that. And then for our biggest challenge with the energy code compliance is really keeping up with the updates. Those happen all the time. And as today is saying, it's what's new again? Like, what do I have to change? How do my business get impacted? And I know a lot of you are all going to be concerned about that. And then the second biggest concern here is understanding the requirements. Like, what do I have to do? What is, a good to do versus what I really have to do? And then making sure we implement those changes in our projects. That's the third most important element. Seems like training and resources is definitely not the problem. And then on the last question, which is, do you plan to pursue further training? Most of you are saying yes. So about 71% of you are going to be looking for more training here, and about 26 is a maybe. So a lot of you are actually thinking about that. So that's really, really interesting and great. Okay, so I think we could go ahead and end this poll and move on. So I'm going to end it and share results out, and folks can see that as we move on to our first speaker. So I'm going to be the person who helps to keep us on time, because we have lots to go over. So I am going to turn it over to Jennifer Rennick in Balance Green Consulting. I'm going to let her give a little introduction of herself, and then to jump into our overview of the 2025 Energy Code update.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Rennick. I'm a licensed architect and through KBEC, a certified energy analyst. And one of the hats I wear is I do the training and code coach for 3C Ren. And I'm going to jump right in with the overview. I'm not going to really go into the why we have the energy code. That's going to be coming with the next two speakers. But I want to give you a highlight of some of the things that I find most interesting as an architect, but also as a certified energy analyst. Like, you have to know everything in the code. So clearly this won't cover everything, but some of the things I picked and highlighted, I thought would be the most interesting to the designers, because you want to get ahead of the code coming into effect January 1st, 2026. One thing that is applicable to all of the occupancy types and all of this throughout the standards are definitions. And I found it really interesting that this time there's a lot more definitions specifically around heat pump water heater types. And this is how it's written in the code. I excerpt it for you. Kind of the main thing we're going to be looking at here real quick is integrated heat pump versus split system heat pump. And then the definitions now are even pulling that apart a little bit more in terms of whether that outdoor compressor is using water to communicate heat transfer to the tank indoors, or using refrigerant. So they're calling it two different split types, and whether it's single pass, multi-pass, and it is what it sounds like, where the water will go through more than one cycle through that appliance. And along with that, the integrated heat pump type is really common that we're seeing in small commercial and residential applications. And as a result of the code change and how these have been implemented in the past, we now have new mandatory requirements specifically for heat pump water heaters that are applicable to all of the occupancy types. So they all say basically you have to have a backup heat source, which can be an electric element. And then there's ventilation requirements. For those of you who are not familiar with heat pump water heaters and how they work, they require quite a bit of air volume around the appliance to extract heat out of that appliance and put that heat into the tank. And so there's requirements around how much volume is needed, how much net free NFA, net free area will be needed around a tank, or you can duct it, but now there's some new requirements about the ducting itself. For example, R6 ducts, or, sealed at the penetration if it's penetrating through the envelope. And those requirements go down a little bit deeper where ducted systems are required. I'm going to touch on some residential high-level changes, some multifamily high-level changes, and then round out with a few of the high-level changes for non-res. For high-res, for the high-level changes for residential, there is going to be a new metric. That's all I'm going to say on that. Amy, I believe, is going to hit on what that new metric is going to be. So just kind of meant, architects, energy consultants, prepare yourself. I don't know what the implications are of the new metric yet, but, hopefully the next presentation will give us a little bit more of a hint on that until we have the software and really play with it. There's some prescriptive requirements that have been expanded a little bit on windows, the heat pumps we talked about, some ERVs, HRVs, that's energy recovery ventilation, heat recovery ventilation, that's for your indoor air quality. And there's been a little bit of insulation increase for some of the climate zones for roof and attic. I'll touch on that briefly as an example. And in the indoor air quality ventilation, there's some new balanced and supply. If you do those types of systems, there's also some new requirements. It's not a lot of change, but it's enough that, of course, if you're an energy consultant, you got to read the code. And if you're practitioner architect, it's important to know that the new prescriptive requirements then applies across all the climate zones, touches on heat pumps. And so we're not saying that you can't use gas appliance. What the prescriptive requirements are saying is that your baseline for performance, or if you do the prescriptive checklist approach, you're going to be looking at heat pumps for space conditioning, heat pumps for water heaters. You're going to be looking at a verification refrigerant charge, which impacts what was called previously a HERS rater, now an ECC rater. But again, Paul's going to touch on that. I won't go much in depth there, just give you a heads up. And these kinds of things with a fault indicator display on your balanced ventilation, ERV, HRV will be part of those new updates. Window prescriptive, right now we have 0.3 U factor for all our climate zones. Under the 2025 code, just some of the climate zones, specifically 1 through 5, 11 through 14, and 16, will get a decrease in the U factor to a 0.27. It's relatively small. Those windows are readily available. And so that is part of what the California Energy Commission does, is they show that these changes are cost effective for the state as a whole, but also there's many options now for windows that meet that new prescriptive requirement. In our Tri-County region, Climate Zone 6, for example, no change. So we're good there. For that prescriptive method, which becomes kind of a baseline for our performance, essentially, we've got climate zones 8, 9, 10. They basically got an upgrade for their attic insulation to an R38. So R30 still continues for climate zone 2 through 7. And the other ones, you know, climate zones now 1 and 8 through 16 are R38. And then we have a new prescriptive option across the whole board for all climate zones, and that's for an unvented cathedral rafter. They're calling it option B, and it's an R38 now, so that's available. Now, new for 2025 are mandatory measures for the indoor air quality, HRV, ERV systems, and basically as balanced systems, balanced indoor air quality systems come more into play. A lot of homes are built with just exhaust only. You have a set exhaust fan to run constantly or intermittently. Now people are looking at balanced ventilation, and as a result, there's requirements of where that unit can be located, because there are filters that need to be changed. And so that has to be accessible. And then there's also requirements now that addresses the outdoor intakes that previously you might have seen that some of it hinted at in mechanical code, but now it's explicit in the Part 6 energy code. For our multifamily high-level changes, there's been a little bit of change on the envelope, specifically the windows. Some change in our HVAC, meaning heating, ventilation, air conditioning for the cooling and the fans. Some outside air ventilation updates. There's some compartmentalized testing, i.e. blower door testing, that Paul's going to hit on, that are specific now to new requirements for multifamily. And there's been some water heater electric readiness updates for large boiler systems. I can give you a couple examples of this. For the windows for multifamily, there's a mandatory minimum that is still relatively easy to meet with the U factor, but they're more explicitly calling out that you can have an exception to it if that multifamily project is in a wildland urban interface fire area. And then you don't have to meet that mandatory minimum. And then the prescriptive, there were some minor changes, and there's some curtain wall minor changes were combined, low rise and high rise together. But basically, for climate zones 1 and 3 through 5, 11, and 13 through 16, there's just been a decrease in the U factor to a 0.28 now. And then the other climate zones don't have any changes. And then the non-res portion of multifamily, no changes. We already, as part of the code, had electric ready. And if you do the performance method, a computer modeling, you still can use gas, but you have to make sure you meet all the performance requirements, and you have to have your building set up so that it's electric ready. And that was true for furnaces, water heaters, cooktops, and dryers. What is new on the update is that we're specifying how much space you also have to allocate for the water heating appliance for an individual dwelling units when you're using that kind of system, one water heater per dwelling unit. And then, of course, this ties back to those mandatory features, mandatory measures that are in the front part of the code that we addressed. And the whole point here is that basically we're going to remove known cost barriers that prevent the owner for swapping out to individual heat pump water heaters when the whole multifamily complex was designed for water heaters for individual units. And then for central water heating systems, there's a whole new section for water heater ready, heat pump water heater ready for multifamily. And again, gas water heating's allowable, but now we need to show the allocation of physical space for the heat pump water heaters, and also the engineers, you need to show, or architects work together to provide what that ventilation path or what that ventilation strategy is going to be, because those heat pump water heaters will need plenty of air volume in order to extract enough heat out of the air and transfer that into the water space. And then, of course, the reserving physical space in the electrical power and bus system and the switchboards that go with it. For the non-residential high-level changes, we have electric readiness for commercial kitchens, which I found interesting. We have the ventilation for the outside air changed. The formula sort of changed. It's the basic formula. So mechanical engineers, when you get into it and look at it, the math, it's still math, but there's just a slight different requirement now in terms of what that minimum outside air is going to be and the way the table is organized. I don't think it's going to have a big impact on the, your equipment sizing or any of that, but there is a difference you should note. They've also added exhaust system to animal and veterinary category. So they're explicit that if you have that kind of occupancy type, you will meet certain exhaust requirements. There's been some lighting control updates to be aware of. And there's been kind of a reworking on the envelope section of the code, where it specifically was addressing walls, roof ceilings, kind of insulation level, but now they've added this vestibule entries. And I'll give you a slide on that. I found that to be very interesting, especially as an architect, that sort of, to me, leans more into what you would do on design side, and it's being kind of spelled out what you need to have for certain occupancy types. And then there's been some update on the PV and battery system requirements. For electric ready for commercial kitchens such as quick serve commercial kitchens, institutional commercial kitchens, those are also part of those new definitions in the beginning of the code. So take a look at that. Everything that I found to be newly defined in the code, there's a reason for them defining it, because then those same exact words are showing up in these new requirements. So I found myself going back and forth between what's the actual definition and then what that new code requirement is. And the idea here for commercial kitchens, is you can still use gas, but now you need to have dedicated branch circuit, wiring outlet, 50 amp minimum, 800 connected amp service panel, et cetera, et cetera. And there are a couple exceptions. So like a lot of things in the code, read the exception first to see if that's going to be applicable to your occupancy type. And for those vestibules, they're public entrances. They're basically double entry, like you would get in our local Target, for example, has a vestibule entry. A lot of our Petco has a double entry vestibule. So we're used to seeing them, but maybe we're not used to seeing them be required. So they'd be applicable to assembly spaces, business, educational, etc. But, oops, there we go. Take a look at the exceptions first before you get too worried about this requirement because for example, one exception we should look at for the Central Coast area is that if you have a project less than 4 stories and less than 10,000 square feet in climate zones 2 through 13, you qualify for that exception.
Hey, Jennifer, just quick note, just wanted to move us along if you can. We're a little bit behind on time. So that'd be.
Oh, okay.
Thanks.
There we go. That's great. Okay. Basically, small increase on wall insulation, like an R2 was required. Now an R4 exterior insulation might be required. Very minor. Hotel, motel, no changes. And last slide, solar battery high rise. There are some occupancy types that were added, and some of these occupancy types have a significant increase, like restaurants, for example, had a dramatic increase. And the battery size will be dependent on the solar size. So that also will impact those certain occupancy types. So you should review that. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Amy, and thank you, everybody.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Jennifer. That's really great. And there are some questions that have been popping in as you've been talking, Jennifer. Some of those are pretty straightforward. You might want to go ahead and just take a peek and answer some of them. If there's ones that you might have as a bigger answer, we can hold that into the Q&A. All right, Amy, are you ready to go?
Hi, I am. Thank you, Mindy.
Great.
And RJ's going to come along with me. We're going to kind of pass it back and forth. So thank you, everyone, for having us this morning. I'm Amy Brousseau with the California Energy Commission. And I also have RJ Witcher with me, also from the Energy Commission. We're happy to be here presenting with you guys. And we're going to talk mainly about the goals for 2025 and the metrics and the software. And then we have a few resources for you as well. And then I believe that you're going to share the presentations afterwards. Is that correct? And then there'll be some links in our presentation that you can get to. And if anyone needs a link, we can also add it to the chat or make sure you have the links afterwards. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and start with the goals, and we'll try to maybe pick up the pace a little bit here for you so you can get back on schedule. So I'm going to just go over some of the goals. So we have a goal to help reduce greenhouse gas in California. And so one of the things that we have been looking at the last few code cycles is how we can do that. And part of that is the reason that we're looking at those all electric requirements. But also our number one goal has always been to have building energy efficiency, but it has to be cost effective. So that, is always something we have to keep in mind when we are looking at any new requirements or increasing the stringency of current requirements. So those are what set our purposes. So for 2025, what that's been looking like is, as was mentioned, is that we're increasing those heat pump baselines, which means you're going to see heat pump requirements in most building types. And that if you want to use gas or other types of fuel, you'll have to use performance modeling. And that's just so that you're going to be compared to the efficiency that you would have with a heat pump. We are also making sure that we're promoting demand flexibility, which means, having solar PV and battery storage systems. So for non-res and some multifamily, you'll see that some of those will have the battery storage requirements prescriptively. For single family, the battery storage is not required, but you do have to be ready for it in the future. So we didn't change that. We're also improving some of our covered process requirements, as was mentioned earlier, the commercial kitchens. That's going to be a change for that to be electric ready. And then we also are focusing on some of the requirements for existing buildings. And we had a lot of things that we were looking at with accessory dwelling units, making sure that we're making that process simple, but also really energy efficient. So those were some of the goals we were working on. And then we're going to look at a few more things here. So where we are right now in this code cycle, we've actually been working on this for a couple of years, as you can see, and we're almost towards the end of this cycle, and we're going to become effective in January of next year. So where we are here, in April is pretty close to having everything ready to publish these final documents for you guys, clean versions of them. We do have marked up versions already available, but we're getting those final versions ready for you. We're getting the software ready. We're getting the forms ready. So in the next couple of months, we're going to have some of those approved at our business meetings and have them ready to go. Hopefully July 1st is our target date to have all of that ready for you guys. And then you have about 6 months to kind of review all of that information before it takes effect. And then we have just a couple of things that we looked at when we were considering the cost effectiveness and the savings. You can see here we're saving almost $5 billion in energy cost savings by having these requirements. And we're avoiding quite a bit of greenhouse gas emissions there. You can see that the reduction numbers here are quite large. And then you can see, so having those heat pumps is helping us with those energy cost savings. And we believe we're going to have over 500,000 heat pumps over the next few years. And then you can see that with PV and battery there, we're expecting that to give us quite a bit of savings and reducing our power, the demand on the grid. We also expect that electric ready to help people when they are ready to switch over to, if they are still having gas and they are ready to switch over in the future, it'll be simple for them to switch. All right. So I mentioned that we're trying to get all of this documents ready for you, but I wanted to let you know we do already have our 2025 webpage up and going, where we have the marked up language already available on our docket, so you can find that there, as well as our reference appendices. Those final clean versions, again, the date there is July 1st, but I believe we'll have them up on our website prior to July 1st. But for the PDF version, hard copies, if you want hard copies, those will be after July 1st. And then again, we are also looking at, one other thing I didn't mention is we are working on a side-by-side code, which is going to have the renumbered formatting. I don't think I have a slide for that one. But so that's coming as well. So stay tuned. I don't have the exact date when that's going to be ready. But we will also have a restructured version of the code with a new numbering system. That won't be the official adopted language, but it will be a side-by-side, so you could see what it will potentially look like for 2028, and we can get feedback from everyone as you see the two versions side by side. And then I'm going to go ahead and pass this over for the next few slides to RJ. And RJ, do you want me to I'll keep controlling it. Just let me know when you want to move them. And then I'll take it back at the end.
That works for me.
All
Thanks,
right.
Amy. So yeah, I'm RJ Rickert. I'm a senior mechanical engineer in the building standards branch and part of the standards tools team, which is responsible for developing the CBEC and CBEC res, non-residential, multifamily, and single-family res compliant software. And I am the lead of the CBEC software and also help out with the CBEC res. And been with the commission since 2015, and yeah, really excited to see so many people here ready to learn about the 2025 code. So I'll jump right into it. So I'm going to be talking about metrics, and then also a little bit about software that we've got for 2025. My first slide here, basically wanted to kind of give a really short California metric history. So as you can see, we've got the code cycles on the left. And then the metrics for each of the different scopes across the graph here. And for quite a while, we were using a source energy metric, not the same as the source that was added in 2022. But yeah, we were just looking at the, basically the power plant heat rates and transmission losses and the energy associated with those to deliver energy up until 2003. But then, as some of you probably remember, there in 2001, we had the energy crisis, rolling blackouts. I think it was the 2000 summer, something like that. But we had those rolling blackouts, and the Energy Commission reacted to introduce time-dependent valued energy, TDV, in the 2005 code. And that lasted all the way through 2016. And that TDV basically gives the different value of energy to each hour of the year, so that we can value those peak hours that where the rolling blackouts occur when everyone turns on their ACs in the afternoon, at higher values than in the middle of the night. And then in 2019, we still had the TDV, but in RES, you can see we introduced energy design rating, and that it used TDV, but it basically did some math to create a ratio that we thought would be more simple for RES, and it also there were some alignment goals there, but otherwise it was basically using the same kind of metrics. And then in 2022, we had the net zero carbon California plan was introduced. And with that, Energy Commission reacted and added the source energy metric, which targets emissions and allows us to value that and promote reducing emissions. And now with 2025, I'll go into more details in the next slides, but in 2025, we did kind of cleanup, alignment. We got rid of the EDR in the single family. So now single family uses the same LSC and source as non-res and multifamily did. And then we also introduced this new peak cooling metric for low rise, which I'll go into more details in the next slide. So you can jump next slide, Amy. Yes. And so, yeah, so in our metrics, we've kind of had two drivers of metrics. We need to develop a cost-effective code that minimizes cost to society, and we've got the Warren-Alquist that's the driver for that, and that mostly has driven the TDV, LSC, those metrics. And then the second one is the greenhouse gas reductions, like I mentioned, and that's driving the source. And let's see, let's go into the next slide. All right, so just a quick summary. We did some unit cleanup. So the TDV metric of the last code cycle in 22. So we have a new time-dependent metric called long-term system cost, LSC for short. And we kind of simplified the math. So in the TDV, we did an extra step to convert the units to a unit of energy. Because the Warren-Alquist Act, basically we converted it to energy in the previous code cycles. But in this code cycle, we wanted to simplify that to really show that we're looking at the cost to the grid, and so we didn't do that extra math. So now we've got dollars per kilowatt hour and dollars per therm to deliver that energy. Let's see. We also did the cleanup, like I mentioned. We got rid of the EDR, so now everyone's using LSC and source. And then we've got that new peak cooling metric for single family res. All right, next slide. Oh, interesting. Oh, I didn't. Okay. I guess there was a slide here. Okay, so terminology too. Yeah, like I said, the TDV changed to LSE. Yeah, that's weird. I didn't know I had a transition in there. All right, next slide, Amy. I'll go next slide. Oh, there you go. Oh, maybe keep clicking. I don't realize there are transitions in these. And then I think one more bullet is going to pop up. Or one more, actually. Yeah. All right. So long-term system costs, LSC for short. They're hourly factors that are used to convert the predicted site energy use to a long-term 30-year dollar cost to California's energy system. And this includes all the long-term costs associated, and we look at policy drivers that would affect the metrics over that 30-year period. Like renewable generation, proliferation of electric vehicles, drastically reducing combustion of fossil fuels in buildings, and so it's not based off of like a today's fixed energy cost. It's looking at the long-term value of the state for this energy that's delivered each hour. And like TDV, it's weighing long-term value for each hour differently. Peak times are more valuable than non-peak times. And just a disclaimer: these aren't utility rates. They're not rate forecasts, and they can't be used, to predict utility bills. All right, next slide. Yep. All right, so then source energy. This one, was introduced in 22 code, so probably a lot of you are already familiar with it. So this one is hourly factors to convert the predicted site energy to a long-run marginal source energy of the fossil fuels combusted to meet the energy demand. So what that means, it's looking at on-site combustion and also off-site, and it's looking at the long-term effects of changes that the commission predicts for the energy resource procurement. So we're looking at that long-term period, not just the current grid. We're looking at what's going to change in the grid and the sources of energy for it, and also in buildings. Let's see. Yeah, and like I was saying, this metric is really for that greenhouse gas reduction, our mandates for that, and how that that plus the LSC really gives us tools to kind of drive those two main policy goals. Okay, let's do it. Next slide. All right, so the new one for this year, or for this code cycle, make sure I'll pull it up. Okay, the new one for this code cycle is the peak cooling. So when we developed the LSC and source for the 2025 code cycle, we realized that even even if a proposed building beat the standard design on those two metrics, they could still have excess peak energy, more than the standard design, during that 4 to 9 period. And so we introduced this peak cooling metric, which basically limits the proposed design to 120% of the standard design peak cooling energy in climate zones 4 and 8 through 15 during the 4 to 9 period, 4 to 9 p.m. period. And it looks at the total annual mechanical cooling in site energy for the standard and proposed, and the proposed can't be more than 120% of that standard design. And yeah, the intent is just to make sure that newly constructed buildings don't unnecessarily increase that peak cooling load to the grid from like heat waves, that kind of thing during the summer. All right, next slide. All right, and so just kind of, and this just a summary of the metrics that buildings have to measure against. So for single family, we've got LSC, and that comes in 2 different bins. So we've got an LSC efficiency, which is just for the efficiency measures. No generation, no PV or battery is included in that bin. And so the proposed needs to have less LSC efficiency than the standard design. And then also the LSC total, and that's the efficiency plus that PV and battery. So it has to meet both. You can't add PV and battery to help your LSC efficiency bin. And then we've also got the source energy, that's a total. And then we've got peak cooling, which is introduced. So max of 120% in the proposed. And then for non-residential multifamily, the same ones, just no peak cooling. All right, next slide. All right, cool. So I'll go into some of the highlights for the software here. Next slide. All right, so a couple of things, there's a huge list, and in the resources that Amy has, and from the CEC and Energy Code Ace has some, and others, there are a ton of changes. So this is like a tiny little list compared to what actually is going to be in there, but a couple I wanted to highlight. So for non-residential, we've got a multi-zone space conditioning system. New standard designs, offices and schools now have this multi-zone standard design, and that's based off of an air-to-water heat pump in that system. Also a big change, we've got the removal of the tailored lighting, and so that'll be a big simplification of the software in some ways. In multifamily, like was mentioned in the previous presentation, we've got ventilation updates, we've got balance and supply only requirements, HRV, ERVs, and FID requirements as well. that'll all be in the software, and then also a bunch of changes to the common area lighting. And then for single family, this isn't like a standard design change, but we've got a new functionality, variable capacity heat pump modeling, which is going to be in the 2025 software. Really excited about that. And that's different than the current software has a VCHP compliance option credit. So that's like a fixed heating and cooling credit if you meet certain criteria. So that's going away, and we will have this new physics-based modeling of VCHPs in the new software. And we've also got heat pumps in all the climate zones now in the standard design. And then, like I said before, we're getting rid of the EDR, and we've got LSC source and peak cooling now. All right, let's see, next slide. Cool, so timing. I don't think you can see my cursor, but we just posted at the top, we've got the RVs. Those are research versions. We just posted those last week, and then they hit the CEC website, I think this morning, actually. So we should have some links in the presentation later for that site, but you can go and download those research versions and kind of kick the tires of the software. Just a big disclaimer, not everything's in there. You can see what's in the RV in the quick start guide, in the non-res software, and in the single family, you can click a link for I think it's called the what's new. I forget what it's termed, but there's a link basically next to the download link. You can see what's in there. The next release will be the RCs. Those are the release candidates, and those are what we're going to look for adoption at the June business meeting, and those should be posting end of May. And we'll be seeking approval of both the ACMs, which set the rules of the software, the ACM reference manuals, and the software at the June business meeting. And then those will all get posted a couple weeks after. We're target about 2 weeks after for the software. So end of June for that 1.0 software to hit the website. And then we got the effective date next January of next year. I think next slide. Okay, and then a couple software resources. Amy has a ton more resources that she's going to go into in a minute, but just some software specific stuff. Just I guess make sure you're subscribed to that Building Energy Efficiency Standard subscription. That's where you'll get notifications when we post new software, when we docket ACMs, when we basically anything important is going to get email notified on that subscription. Yeah, we got the link to the 22 standards page. Hopefully these links will be live in the presentation when it's shared, but we've got a CBEC and a CBEC res support emails, and then a couple links to the software web pages there, and then just industry groups that if you're interested in getting more involved in California compliance software, we've got KBEC, CalBEM, and IBIPSA USA. And that, I think I pass it back over to you, Amy, for the next slide.
Thank you. And I just have a couple more slides. It'll just take about a minute or so. I'll go kind of quick through these ones. Just a few more resources, as RJ mentioned. We do have our Energy Code Support Center webpage where we have some great overviews of what's new for 2025. So we have single family, multifamily, non-res, what's new, and they're 2-page documents. So they're, quick, easy, bulleted. We also have the single family, mandatory requirements. We've already posted that as well. And so if you do the little QR code or when the presentation comes out, you guys will have these links. And then also we have, as I mentioned, our support center. We have a lot of resources for current code, but stay tuned because we're going to be posting more for 2025 as we get closer to January. And then we have, again, current code, a great handout for ADUs. I know that's always big, and we will be updating this for 2025 as well later this year. And we have our hotline if you would like to ask us specific questions, although I know 3C Rent also has a great code coach program that they're going to talk about. And one more, the newsletter, the blueprint, if you haven't already subscribed, we will all have great resources in here and Q&As. So stay tuned for that. So that was all of our, we're happy to hang out and do the Q&As when it's our time. So thank you guys for having us, and I'll hand it back.
All right, great. Thank you for that. And you are exactly on time, Amy and RJ. So well done to make up some moments on that. That's fantastic. So I have a few questions still open. I'm going to start with kind of a larger one from Spencer. Hi, Spencer. How are you? Nice to see your name up there. So his question is regarding the CEC goals. Given the NEM 3 requires a battery system to make a payback and cost effectiveness reasonable for a homeowner, would it make sense to make batteries a requirement? Builders who install solar alone and sell solar as a requirement, mostly through a lease without a battery, aren't able to provide greater than 50% bill offset. So it's kind of a philosophical question, and maybe Amy or RJ, do you have any thoughts on that?
I guess so. Batteries are required in non-res and multifamily for certain. There are certain situations where they're not required, but there are prescriptive requirements for batteries in non-res multifamily. For res, I think it's just battery ready. I think right now, I believe. But yeah, I think it's probably something we're looking at. I guess I wouldn't want to speak for the standards development people, but I don't know if you have
Yeah, I
anything else
think,
we could add, Amy. But
yeah, I agree. So yeah, we do have the requirements and certain occupancies for those non-residential. We've added new occupancies for this code cycle. And then because we have to look at the cost effectiveness with single family, it's not quite there. I think that's the main reason it's not required, but we do have energy storage ready. And it is still an option. You could do it performance and get some credit if you do add a battery to those single family projects. And then for multifamily, I believe it is for the 4 or more stories on multifamily that you do have to have the battery, but 3 or less, you don't. But again, you can get a credit if you do have that.
Thanks, Amy. Gina, you had maybe a comment or a question. Maybe you can turn your camera on for us too.
Oh, sorry, I've been homesick, so I've been not letting anyone see me. I just wanted to, as an energy consultant, having battery still is one of my flexibility measures, and the performance approach is invaluable. And whereas I get it as a state, we're trying to get to a certain level, still giving us flexibility measures and the performance approach really, in my experience, has helped homeowners be able to make the choices they'd like to make about their homes.
Great. Thanks for that, Gina. I hope you're feeling better. I'm sorry about that. So Logan Straight, he had a question to ask about elaborating on the physics-based VCHP modeling. RJ, is that you?
yeah, sure. Yeah. So, we'll be posting more details of how, well, actually, so once the ACM posts, there'll be more details on how, like, if you want to really, get into the details of how it works. But basically by that physics-based, I mean, so in the previous compliance option was just a fixed credit. So it would just model the standard design system, not a VCHP, and then you would get a credit and heating and cooling above that if you met the certain criteria and we're installing a qualified VCHP. The new model actually models variable capacity units, including duct heat losses, all the bits about the actual modeling. And I guess, it's hard to kind of get into the details of that, but I would say, yeah, once the ACM posts, we'll have links to like all of the assumptions and methodologies for that. And it is in the, it will be in the software, so you can kick the tires of it and just see kind of how it works, at least. But yeah, the actual modeling methodology and stuff are yet to be posted. So.
Thanks, RJ. And then Robert Gomez has, will low-rise multifamily buildings be exempt from solar requirements if virtual net energy metering is not feasible?
I believe so. Yeah, I think if there's no, I'd have to look at the code, but I believe there are exceptions for VNEM when it's not there.
Yeah, and we
Yeah.
changed the wording slightly on that exception, but yes, that is the intent. But we did update the wording on that so that it's more clear.
Great, thanks, Amy. And then I'm not sure, this might be a very specific one, but Michael Berry says, does standard design HP penalize FAUs. A lot of good acronyms in there. Anybody have that answer for Michael? Or do we?
Depends, probably.
Why don't you? I'll let you think about it, and you can answer online on there. So, and then Milo says, will new code energy software be able to allow full modeling of VRF systems for single family buildings?
Not the current software, but that is something on the radar. So, yeah.
Okay, great. And just so folks know, when you look at your Q&A, you can pop it open, and folks are also answering some of those questions written down, and then we're doing some of them live. So if you want to see what that conversation is going, you can check on that. Okay, and I think somebody else, we've already done those, so great. We're good to go. Let's move on to our next speaker, which is Mariko. Let's tee you up here. All right. There we are. Great. It's all yours.
Alrighty. So my name is Mauricio Morales, and I am the Director of Training for Cheers. And then also with us is David Chu. He's the Director of Compliance and Quality Assurance. So let's get started. All right. So I will be going over the updates and changes to the Cheers registry with the implementation of the new 2025 ECC program. So, as many of us know by now, the ECC program is a continuation and a revision of the HERS program. Now, there have been significant changes and updates that will take effect January 1st, 2026. And one of the most notable and obvious changes is the rebranding of HERS to ECC. So for this presentation, we will be covering a few of the new ECC program changes and updates that directly affect ECC providers and their registries. We'll discuss the code, formally recognizing rater companies and what that means for providers. We will also cover new conflict of interest provisions, such as the Declaration of Separation of Service, consumer information forms, project owner reports, and rater of record. And we'll provide a brief overview to the updates of quality assurance. And lastly, we're going to touch a little bit on conflicted data and rater discipline. All right, so with the official recognition of rater companies, the ECC program sets new requirements for both the providers and ECC rater companies. So let's talk about the ECC provider responsibilities first. Well, just like for previous code cycles, Cheers is responsible for training and certifying raters. But now, in addition to that, we will also be training and certifying rater companies. Now that means Cheers must develop and administer a rater company training course in accordance with the new section 10-103.3. Now, once the raters and rater companies have been trained and certified, Cheers is required to conduct quality assurance checks, and this is done to ensure compliance with the new ECC program. So providers must resolve complaints and act as overall stewards of the program. Now that means collaborating with the AHJs, consumers, homeowners, raters, rater companies, and the CEC, all to achieve the program goals. Okay, let's talk about some of the requirements for the rater companies. For each rater company, there must be one principal that is a certified ECC rater. Now, a principal is defined as a senior management level employee, not limited to an owner or shareholder. So the rater company applicant must complete the rater company training and sign the rater company agreement. Now, the rater company agreement will be provided by Cheers as part of our new rater company training. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the Cheers registry and conflict of interest. So rater companies will have view-only access to the compliance documents registered by one of their raters in our registry. Rater companies cannot change any data entered into the registry for certificates of verification. Now, rater companies are allowed to be the documentation author for certificate of compliance and installation, but they cannot sign as the responsible person. So project access in the registry will be available to raters, document authors, individuals with signature authority, and responsible persons. Okay, let's talk about the Declaration of Separation of Service. So rater companies are not allowed to provide additional project support unless that company submits a Declaration of Separation of Service. Now, this is a new requirement, and this declaration must be registered with Cheers. This declaration provides proof that the rater providing field verification and diagnostic testing is independent from a person employed by that same rater company who might be providing additional project support services. Now, this could be things like design, construction management, permitting, or responsible person signatories on that same project. So again, just to reiterate, rater companies may not provide additional project support unless they submit a Declaration of Separation of Service. So with this declaration, the rater company must show that the person providing those additional project services does not have management hiring, firing, payment, or any other authority over the rater conducting the testing. The rater company must also show proof that the person providing these additional services is qualified to do so, and the company must show proof that the person providing signatory service will be legally responsible. Now, the overall purpose of this is to ensure that the rater can conduct their work without any conflicts of interest. Okay, let's talk about consumer information forms. So Cheers must develop a consumer information form. Now, this form will provide details covering the ECC program, the roles and responsibilities of everyone involved, and the process for a consumer to file a complaint. Now, there will also be a section to record the consumer's information. So rater companies are responsible for ensuring this consumer information form is registered for each project. Now, this form ensures that consumers understand and receive the value of those field verification and diagnostic tests, and that they're informed of their rights. Now, this is a new requirement, and it will be tracked by Cheers and the CEC. Additionally, Cheers is required to ensure that this consumer information form is correct, and we will use this form to schedule quality assurance checks on the raters. Incomplete information, incorrect contact information, or failure to register this form will lead to rater or rater company discipline. All right, moving on to project owner reports. So the rater or rater company is required by the ECC program to provide a report to the building or project owner. Now, please note this is not the same as the project status report. Now, Cheers will help facilitate this report in our registry, and it will be known as the project owner report. So the project owner report is to be given to the building or project owner. Now, this can be a builder on a production housing project, a homeowner on a custom built home, or a homeowner or landlord on an existing home project. Now, the project owner report must include the rater or rater company information, data registry information, and it should clearly identify what services and tests were performed, the results of those tests, and the costs associated. So ultimately, this form provides transparency to the project owner, and it's another tool to help the AHJs check the status of the project. Failure to provide the project report with correct information will result in discipline for the rater or rater company. All right, let's talk about the rater of record. So the new ECC program supports raters who truthfully registered failed ratings due to inadequate or poor installation. Now, the code implements what's called a rater of record. So essentially, once a rater registered a failed field verification or diagnostic test, that verification documentation will be locked by our registry, and the rater that registered it will become the rater of record. Now, only the rater of record can go in and register a new passing result after that initial failure has been fixed. So this prevents the installer or the builder from hiring a different rater company to falsely certify that failed test. Now that's commonly known as rater shopping. Well, how do we release a project from a rater of record? Well, the ECC program does make provisions that allows the registry to release a project from that rater. Now the project can be released if the rater agrees to release the project, or if the rater is physically unable to continue work on that project. Now that could be due to injury, misfortune, or availability. Another reason to release the rater is if their certification has been suspended, or if the rater is just unwilling to continue work on the project. Now, just a note, Cheers must verify the retest of that failed initial verification. Now, this can be done through a physical site visit by Cheers QA staff, a desk audit, or photographic evidence. So let's talk a little bit about quality assurance. So at a minimum, ECC providers are required to perform one on-site audit, formerly known as a field QA, and one desk audit, formerly known as a desk QA, on each rater each year. Now, an on-site audit involves a Cheers QA rater going to the site and performing the same field verification and diagnostic tests performed by the rater, and this is done to evaluate the accuracy of that rater's results. Now, again, these were formerly known as field QAs or blind field QAs, meaning the rater does not know that their results are being audited. Next, we have a desk audit. This involves, again, a Cheers QA rater, and this time they're evaluating the registered certificates of verification for consistency and accuracy. Now, these were formerly known as desk QAs, and again, the rater does not know that their results are being audited. And then lastly, for raters that verify QII, the ECC provider must now perform one shadow audit or shadow QA for each rater per year. So that involves a Cheers QA rater performing a ride-along to observe the rater as they verify QII. Now, there are some additional quality assurance requirements when it comes to sampling. So QA will be triggered for developments that utilize sampling that have 100 dwelling units or more. So that means that one QA will be required for every 100 dwelling units that utilize sampling. Now, just a note here, if a provider, i.e. Cheers, is refused access to that community or development, the ECC program states that that project's data will be considered conflicted data and must be flagged and reported. So let's talk a little bit about conflicted data. So the ECC program addresses conflicted data and has very strict prohibitions on false, inaccurate, or incomplete information. If a conflict of interest occurs between a rater and perhaps another person on that same job providing additional project support, this can result in conflicted data. The data must then be flagged and the test results may be invalidated. The ECC program also requires any data collected by a rater with conflicts of interest to be designated as conflicted data, regardless of the accuracy of it. And lastly, Cheers is prohibited from knowingly accepting conflicted data. And if Cheers identifies and confirms that data is conflicted, it must be flagged. We must commence disciplinary action, inform the homeowner, the rater company, and the AHJ. So let's talk about rater and rater company discipline. So the ECC program provides specific and very robust disciplinary steps for raters and rater companies. This new process involves 4 steps, with the 4th ending in decertification. So even for step 1, the notice of violation, this first step comes with strict disciplinary requirements, such as the rater being required to undergo additional training, the rater being responsible for the costs associated with the quality assurance, the rater being responsible for the cost to the property owner for the original testing and any necessary retesting due to the violation. The rater or rater company being responsible to notify the affected homeowner and provide proof of that notice to Cheers. And then lastly, the rater must perform all these corrective actions and remedy the test within a specific time frame. So as we can see here, the disciplinary steps for even the first violation are pretty severe. All right, so overall, in summary, the new ECC program, it brings massive updates and revisions to the old HERS program with a focus on consumer protection, conflicts of interest, quality assurance, and data accuracy and access. Thank you.
All right, David. Are you have any more to add? Or are you just there on support?
I'm just here to support. I'm just answering all the questions in Q&A.
Okay, great. So there was a few questions that are coming up, one or two, I think we'll get answered live in a few minutes, but if there's something you want to add into that, please do. Let me queue up Paul. Are you ready to go, Paul?
Morning, everyone. Yes.
Great. Welcome, and turning it over to you to manage the slides.
Yeah, like someone else is here on here, Michael Barrier. Hi, Michael. I'm a boots on the ground HERS rater. I've been doing this since the good old days of the TDV generation. I came in kind of during the 2005 code. So I've been at it 18 years or so. And my PowerPoint partner here, Jennifer, she's going to drive, and we're going to kind of do this together to try to distill out what we're going to do. Before we get into the language here, I just want to tell other raters on this in this meeting not to panic. It's still early in the process. We will rely on the CEC to tell us what to do, and working with our providers for training, support, and direction. I think when the dust settles, it'll be okay. So with that, go ahead and drive here, Jennifer. So as you know, we're out there doing these tests for CF1Rs. And here's a typical listing that Jennifer's brought up. Go ahead and drive.
Yeah, keep going.
Yeah, so I think one time there was up to 29 different tests and verifications we could do, depending on what the EC had to pull out of that mix to get your dwelling to comply with energy code. It seems like it's really reduced lately to the big ones, duct leakage. Now we're getting more and more refrigerant charge because of the emphasis on heat pumps and so on. And that's kind of showing up in the new language as we've seen already. So nothing new probably for the people in this meeting. It's easy as 1, 2, 3, right? So my wife is a Title 24 EC, and I would have actually a question for staff with regards to the conflict, because she's one half of the business. She's generating the certificates, and I'm kind of doing the verification. So I'm going to send a separate email to the powers that be on that to see. Really, I look at myself as an independent rater. I'm not a rater company, but we are an energy consulting company overall. So we'll have to get to that later.
Sorry about that.
Okay, go ahead and take over.
Okay.
I'm going to be the color man for a few more slides. Okay.
This is just a real quick overview. A lot of times the folks that we're doing the trainings for are not that familiar with all of the forms. And so they don't quite understand that now with low-rise multifamily, that there's LMCC compliance forms and LMC1, LMCV for the verification, for the installation, that are kind of a corollary to the CF1R, CF2R, CF3R that we have for single family, multifamily. So that's a little bit of a review. And then also for those folks that really dig into the code a little bit more, I don't know if it was explicitly stated that a lot of the HERS requirements were listed previously under Title 20. And now under the new ECC program, all those things have been moved to Title 24, Article 1, Section 10-103.3, which you can fully read. And so there's those new requirements that we just learned about that are all in that section. And then the other thing for folks, we've been doing it for a while. So the acronym FV and DT, field verification diagnostic testing, we may be used to it, but I've noticed a lot of like our customers, clients, the designers, they may not be used to that acronym. So it's just kind of a heads up when you talk to people. Now, how will a HERS raters, how will a ECC raters work change under 2025? Okay, this will be interesting. And this is where Paul's gonna jump in. And we basically listed what we just heard about as far as the procedural part of it. And then we're going to highlight a few things that would potentially be new scope of work from the perspective of a HERS rater.
Yeah. So, okay, I guess number one, you're going to have to get new business cards. Right. But from the actual field work, it's not going to change. Raters go out there and do good work. The next thing that's been folded in now is change to your administrative portion of your business. And that's going to fall under those reports that you're going to have to supply to your provider and going uphill to the CEC. So keep track of your work. I guess it's going to boil down to maybe a nice spreadsheet or something of which I can't stand, but I'm going to have to kind of log my job so that I can have my annual report due to starting March of 2027, so that the CEC can track that data and turn that into better service for the consumer, as I assume the upshot of that process. So again, your field work's not going to really change that much. There may be one or two additional items you're going to have to look out for. If you are uploading on behalf of installers CF2R data, there may be some new forms we'll have to bring into our mix. I assume there's going to be a new form for the heat pump supplementary heating item. It wasn't really discussed yet. Maybe that's in a future slide.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's going to be one form accounting for a lot of different installer measures or separate forms, but we'll get to that in the coming weeks and months.
Yeah, and we just kind of went over in depth the new annual reporting requirements, but just kind of FYI, from the perspective of someone who's in the field, just you're going to have this work that Paul was just talking about, where your field verification diagnostic testing organized by enforcement agency, including average costs of those services, will all be part of it. So there'll be a little bit more kind of paperwork for you in that sense. And then, of course, the rater companies have the slightly different reporting requirements that we just heard about. The new summary report for the consumer, again, this is going to be a little bit more work in terms of what is required for the HERS rater, but it doesn't seem like it's that burdensome. But you're going to have a new report you're going to create. It includes the services performed, needs to be conspicuous and separate document. And then, of course, the itemized of the field diagnostic testing, other services, and the amounts charged and the results. So it seems pretty straightforward, but just another layer of work to be aware of that will impact the actual HERS rater. This one I thought was interesting. And so this is the joint appendices. So this is new language in there for the photographic documentation. So I highlighted the photograph shall include sufficient background to identify the location of the project site, just because in the work Paul and I've done, we know that sometimes we have been involved in projects where the photographs are so generic, like you can't really tell if a HERS rater actually was there doing the work.
Right. So I've made it a practice, and fellow raters, I'm sure you do the same thing. If you're doing 2, 3, 4 jobs a day, like say you've got a bunch of alterations lined up. You show up. I have a really basic, just digital, old school digital camera, and everyone laughs at me that I'm not using my phone and setting it up to a cloud, but I'm just wired that way. So I take a picture of the address of my equipment, of the results, and so on. And then when I get home every night, I upload it to my laptop. So I have a photographic, basically it's a little a pinger from my head, like, oh, where was I? Okay, now I can upload it to the registry and so on. So I kind of keep all that on my hard drive, and then I can back that up to some other form of media. I'm just trying to avoid the cloud for now, and I probably should get with the times. But anyway, you've got photographic evidence, you got everything you need so that if the QA people say, hey, what happened here? It's right there on your hard drive, your computer, and you've got backup media as well. So preserve your data and archive it so that when the time comes, it's at your fingertips.
Yeah, and for the audit program, we heard about that, the quality assurance review from the perspective of the HERS rater. Just do you need to meet that exemplary ECC rater status? You need to be continuously certified for a minimum of 5 years. You got to pass all those audits within the 12-month period. And just as a reminder, that quality insurance installation QII shadow audit is part of it. You got to do a non-QII shadow audit, an in-lab audit, and the desk audit that we were talking about. So there's a little bit more kind of work there for the.
And as an ECC rater, that's going to be your goal, you guys, is to, do the good work, get to the exemplary status so you can go forward. Can you back up one slide? Yeah. What was awesome about the CalCerts training facility is they had a house, and you would go into that house. And when I became a HERS Roman numeral 2 rater, you're there doing basically an audit. I think that's a really good training tool. I'm not sure if Cheers is going to get to that level of training, or if there's another way they're going to kind of present challenges for ECC raters to kind of get to that exemplary status for field testing. But I think it's a good idea. Certainly made me a better rater.
Yeah. Okay, great. And then there's a little bit of potentially increased scope of work for HERS rater. For example, 2025 code, the outside air ventilation for multifamily. The only multifamily we're talking about here, it's either going to be balanced ventilation or supply only ventilation. And so a new requirement is the compartmentalization testing that the ECC rater would do. And
fun stuff.
That's new construction, by the way.
Right. So you've got a 64-unit apartment building, get your team together and just bang them out, because that's a fair amount of work. Of course, there could be sampling protocol in there. It's going to depend on how you approach the job.
Yeah. Okay. And then another potential new scope of work is for single family prescriptive compliance approach with the HRV, ERVs I alluded to, heat recovery ventilation or energy recovery ventilation, a fault indicator display, and the manufacturer has to be certified to the CEC, which means like Paul would take a look at that product and look it up on the energy.ca.gov website, see that it is meeting these requirements.
And or HVI, right? So that's going to be some office work for you guys. So you can check that box.
Yep. So that's coming up. And there's just an example. Some of the brands now, like Panasonic, for example, are saying, hey, it's complying with Title 24, and you can get these, make sure you just order the parts and pieces that all go together to meet this prescriptive requirement. So kind of high level. HERS raters now an ECC rater. HERS provider now ECC provider. HERS measures are now ECC measures. And the kind of that takeaway, Paul, is that, it sounds like not a lot's changed, but
I have a question for everyone. My wife utilizes the existing conditions by a HERS rater credit in her energy modeling for additions, remodels, alterations, and so on. I'd be curious to know how many ECs in our audience are utilizing that credit, because I understand it's pretty significant and we leverage it a lot in her work. So I hope that that will still be a fairly good credit, because I found that it's really beneficial to get to a job site to put your eyes on what's really actually there for the energy consultant, so they can accurately model and leverage that for additional credit in their compliance document. So usually, you know, how old is that water heater you're looking at, and some of the ratty old insulation that's in, you know, these attics and so on. It's beneficial. It's all good information. So we're happy to do that when the opportunity presents.
Right. Perfect segue.
Right.
What you call pre-con meetings will become more imperative. That's
Please,
a quote.
please,
That's
everyone.
a quote from Paul.
Pre-cons. Yeah,
Is that-
instead of having to backfill your energy compliance document, get it right the first time and get everyone on board, so we're not getting squeezed, you know, at or near final.
Right.
Right.
And then kind of example too, just related to that workflow. When you are working with whoever that energy consultant is producing the CF1Rs, let's say you're doing a performance modeling here. I mean, have the architect, have them look at the HERS feature summary, have them make note if duct leakage testing is required, for example. You know, have them note that these HERS measures are triggered on the different mechanical forms, because ultimately we want to help folks really figure out what is required ahead of time, because the big reveal is the big thing Paul and I are advocating for is to maybe get the architects ahead of time to include some special features section or the field inspection section on their cover sheet for some of these residential and multifamily projects, so that it's not a big surprise to people. And we recommend, you know, you put that on there. And this is just an example of what could go on and where you could put it. So we're advocating to be more proactive, especially given some of the changes that are coming up. They'll be even more important.
Raters, how many times have you heard this one from your builder? Oh, it wasn't on the plans. So make sure it gets on the plan. And that means architectural details sometimes, especially with QII. Show where the air barrier is, exterior and interior, and so on, because they love an out sometimes. And when you get down to final and you, like I said, you get the squeeze, it makes it really difficult for everyone involved.
That's right. So with that, we'll hand it over to Mindy and Gina.
Awesome. And just so you know, there are a slew of questions that came through in your last little question. And Paul, your question to everybody, I offered a whole bunch of them. So you might take a look at those as we're going through it. I have said teed a couple of those to answer live after Gina. So just take a peek at those as we go through it. And Gina, are you ready?
I'm ready. I want to say I use existing conditions. It's an invaluable tool. We need all our tools. Am I ready to go? Is that a yes?
Sorry, that was a yes. Go
Okay,
for it.
and I can advance the slides.
You should have a little control on the bottom left-hand side.
I see it now.
Right.
There we go. Okay, I went too fast. Oh, I see what RJ was talking about. Okay, so my name is Gina Griffiths-Rada. I probably know a lot of you, and I'm here supporting Energy Code ACE and its involvement with the Certified Energy Analyst program that is managed through CABEC, California Association of Building Energy Consultants, of which I'm hoping all of you are aware of. And I wanted to give you a little bit of history of how did CABEC decide to pursue a Certified Energy Analyst certification program. I don't know if you guys know, but anyone can do what we do as energy consultants. I can call myself God, and I don't have to prove that to anyone. And what we do is difficult. What we do takes a lot of knowledge. What we do takes a lot of coordination, as we've just seen from Jennifer and Paul regarding the entire team. And we're the first ones, really honestly, typically to touch a project of what does the energy code have to say about this project, and what are the variety of different options do we have to achieve compliance, and what are the impacts of those choices we're making. There's so many times I see people just start clicking buttons, the button clicking until it says building complies, and they're like, yay, okay, there you go. And then the poor HERS rater, soon to be, and I have to say what I'm calling it is X rater, is going to look at this list and go, you guys are not prepared for this. This was a big lift, and you brought me in at the very end of the project because that's when you typically bring in the X rater. So we have a lot to talk about. So Quebec started way back when with the CEPE program. And it was a very simplistic program, really geared towards enforcement, the Certified Energy Plans Examiner. And this was done way back in 1985. Who was around in 1985? Yeah, I was. Yeah, thank you, Danica. So it was about giving plans examiners, because at this point in 1985, the Energy Code was still relatively new. People were still like, what is this new code in town? And it was getting them to at least understand the hierarchy of the Energy Code, because as we know, the Energy Code as it's currently formatted does not match any other part of the building code, and is very difficult for most of our enforcement agencies to be able to comprehend. So it was a very simple multiple choice question. This is when multiple choice exam. This is when I started teaching. Misty Bruceri from Misty Bruceri Associates said, "Hey, Gina, you have soothing tones. What do you think about teaching to the CEPE?" And then it all took off from there. So the CEC contracted through Calbo for this to happen because of the need of understanding, hey, we need our enforcement and have a better understanding of this new code in town. And then it just was kind of like a hot potato, and it kept moving all over the place. Who's taking care of the CEPE program? And that's when Doug Beeman and the 2008 codes took over the program, and it took Quebec took over the administration of the CEPE program. Well, the CEPE program got sunsetted. It just was not quite meeting the grade anymore because our code kept getting more and more complex. For those of us who've been doing this for a while, remember the 1985 code? I just looked up the 1998 code. I swear to God, it was only 3 pages long. It was amazing. It's definitely evolved since then. Our tools have evolved since then. And that's when Quebec, with the support of the Codes and Standards Program, Energy Code ACE, really looked at, we need to make sure that there is a program, certification program, that can reach us towards our goal to have certified individuals provide at least performance calculations when we're doing calculations to the Energy Code because of the complexity. Okay, so they brought in a bunch of experts on how do we create certification exams that can uphold the rigors of the law if it were to be something that was proposed to be required within the Energy Code. Now, there are 2 steps to the CEA. To be a CEA, the first step is AEA, Associated Energy Analyst. And this is as close to the CEPE exam as we can get. It's just the multiple choice exam. You know where to find things. You know how to interpret what you're finding in the code. You know how to look at a drawing set and compare that to what is that certificate of compliance saying, and where can you find the information within the code. And then can you make reasonable assumptions about the compliance design with what you're seeing in the compliance documentation. That is the first step for everyone who wants to be a CEA, but a lot of people decide to stay here because they need a deep understanding of how to apply the code. They don't need a deep understanding of how to model to the code. So we currently right now do have a pilot program in which we are bringing in AHJs, and we are going working with quite a few AHJs at this time in which they're going through a mentoring program with KBEC that supports them successfully passing the AEA exam. And it's been a pretty exciting year to work with that particular pilot group. Now, you do have to be a member in good standing, you have to take the test, et cetera, and so forth, and you have to do a professional training saying, I promise I will not cheat. Now, what also was added for the CEA exam is the modeling component. So this is understanding the software choices you have to use the performance approach to be able to support what you understand in terms of the multiple choice exam. Now, you're going to have to pass both parts of the exam, that multiple choice, that if you stay there and you pass, you're an AEA. You move on and you take the modeling exam. You then also have to prove your work experience and have a certified CEA either manage your work or review your work for you to then take that wonderful professional practices workshop, because again, we don't want people cheating, and do continuing education units to maintain your CEA. Now, there are two AEA and CEA programs. There's single family, and then there is the multifamily non-residential. Currently, we do have the single family program fully functioning. The multifamily non-residential program is still being worked on. It was a big beast for 2022 with the changes that were made for multifamily, especially, and also non-residential. We expect that AEA and CEA exam to be available towards the end of this year. What's exciting about that? It's a one and done test. It's going to be a 2022 and a 2025 exam, meaning you will not have to recertify for that multifamily non-residential AEA, CEA exam that's coming up, like you will for single family. Right now, single family, you either pass this 2022 and then you recertify for 2025. For those of you who have been thinking, I'm not sure if I want to take the 2022 exam, maybe I'll just wait for 2025. If you can pass the multiple choice exam of the AEA exam, and you can, if you pass now, then you just have to take the recertification exam for 2025, which is much less questions. It's you don't ever have to retake the modeling exam. It really reduces the lift and the load as you continue to maintain your CEA. So there are various competencies I already talked about that are integrated into this program, understanding the basics about where can you find things, what even is the energy code. But it's not just about understanding the energy code, it's understanding the project also. And I find a lot of people need guidance and they need help really digging deep on what are they seeing in the plans and what are they not seeing in the plans to be able to assess how that project is. Are you guys still there?
Yes, we're still here.
Okay, my computer went black, so I will start talking again now that I can see again. But then it's also about how can you collect the data that you're seeing in your drawings and the questions you still need to ask of your clients. And there might be things you just don't know. They haven't decided on the mechanical equipment type. They haven't decided on certain things. Well, what should you assume? And it's crazy to me how many people assume things that are so far away from compliance that they just then are struggling with how do I get the project into compliance because they don't understand what they're being compared to under the hood as part of that baseline building, as we were talking earlier about heat pumps, will now be that baseline water heating and space heating equipment configuration for single family in this next code cycle. What's the impact of that if I want a gas furnace? What really truly is that impact and understanding how that's going to affect the conversations you're going to have with your clients. Being able to troubleshoot. Software is complicated. Understanding the results is complicated. And being able to know not one, how to find the modeling issues and the errors, but then how to get help. Where can you get help? Because none of us can do this alone. We are not alone. That's why we joined KBEC. And then the very end is are you aware of above code, bringing it all together? You know, are there any local ordinances? Are there any utility incentive rebates? Is there any need to go, let's say, above and beyond in terms of fire resistance? And I'm in a WUI area, and really being that expert who doesn't just understand the energy code, but the ever shifting sands of us being able to support compliance here in California. So we do have training.
Yeah, just wanted a quick note. We have about 5 minutes for yours, and I would love to leave a little time for that Q&A. So about if you can finish in 5, that'd be awesome.
Well, I think I can finish it in 1, but okay. So we do have a mentoring program that is supported through KBEC. It's free. Let me say that again. It's free, but it requires you to make a commitment. I have a few of my mentees here on this call. This mentoring program isn't for the wimps. It is not a 3-week program done one and done. Hey, I'm an energy consultant. No, the single family program is 9 months long. The multifamily non-residential program is 11 months long, and you must be a single family CEA before you're allowed to be in that program because it's intense. Because understanding the multifamily non-residential code and modeling is not easy. So join us. It's, is that right? Yes, it's a free program, which we will be starting again in January. We have developed this program through Energy Code Ace. We use all of their tools. We use every single class they offer. And we review and integrate into the mentoring program all the resources. We also integrate all of the CEC resources. We also integrate any other amazing resources that are out there. We try and just glean everything that the industry has provided to us as tools. Let's learn it all, and let's learn how to use it to take the AEA multiple choice exam and then continue on to take the CEA modeling exam. So I'm hoping you will join us. Remember, we have that mentoring program that is joining up, that is happening not just for CEAs, but for AEAs. We are finding the work we're doing is making a difference, and we are collecting the data. I got to tell you what we have found, CEAs make a difference. It makes a difference in the results that we're seeing in those CF1Rs, those plan sets, and those buildings that are being built. Now, we are a volunteer organization at KBEC, so if you've ever thought to dive deeper into this and to contribute, please let us know, because we would love for you to join us with everything we're doing at KBEC.
Awesome, Gina. I'm glad you were able to do such a great energetic presentation when you're not feeling great. I can imagine when you're in full benefits of health. So thanks for that. That's awesome. Okay, so we have a number of questions that are up here, and I'm going to see if I can navigate some of them. I'm going to go with the first one. It was Carol offered. And she wanted to have some better clarification of supervising authority over raters. There's a lot of coordination between raters and modeling to true up installed equipment. I'm not sure if it's who wants to take that on, Jennifer, Paul, or Gina, or David. David, looks like you want to jump in.
Well, I was hoping for a little bit of clarification on what she's referring to the truing up.
Let me I'm going to actually, Carol, I'm going to let you speak here if I can get my thing up on and allow you to talk. So if you would like to say that, please do. You can unmute yourself and talk.
Me okay?
Yep, now we can hear you.
Okay, great. Change my speaker. And apologies for pelting you with a zillion questions. There's so much that's unanswered. You know, we go through a lot of conflicts with the green programs, with lead and the rater and the provider and all of that. And when we talk about conflict and supervisory, you know, who can fire the rater or whatever, you know, a lot of us do, you know, as Paul does, you know, you have someone in your firm doing Title 24 and you have another person doing HERS rating in the same company. It's not an uncommon occurrence, and the statement was really unclear for us to understand how to define conflict between those two roles within a company.
Okay, I think I can answer that. So my answer is specific to Title 24.
Yeah.
When it comes to what I think the CC is trying to accomplish with this, is they're saying that you can't be the responsible person that signed off as a responsible party for that CF1R or for that LMCC, right? The energy modeler can't be the person that has the authority to fire or somehow reprimand the rater. In other words, it can't be the same people, is what they're saying.
Okay.
Does that make sense? So you can
Yeah.
still be the document author. You can be the person that designed it. You just can't be responsible for it.
Got it. Okay.
Clarify? Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Right, and then I think I have kind of, it's not the same, but it has some similar elements. Angela asked, she's a HERS rating company, and what happens if an installer, builder, owner refuses to repair or fix a failed measure? We have a hard time getting payment when a project fails, and nobody wants to repair the failed test, or what the failed test cannot be repaired unless some major uninstall occurs. How is the reader company protected when that report test fails?
Well, I wish I could speak to a lot of that, but primarily the only way the rater company is going to be able to defend itself is just don't provide them with these certificates. When you don't provide them with the certificate of verification, right, the CF3R or the LMCV, essentially they can't close their permit or they can't get a certificate of occupancy. That's how it's supposed to work. So if they want to actually sell or move into that house, they're going to have to pay you for your services and fix what needs to be fixed. Does that answer your question? I'm hoping it does.
Okay. Yeah, it sounds like a challenging thing. You have to sort of have
It is, yeah, it's a business
there,
problem.
right? Yeah, okay. Let's see. Looks like Dave, since I have you on the hook, you were in the process of answering Dan Johnson. Is the energy consultant barred from providing the existing conditions ECC? You were going to answer that.
Oh, that's a really good question. I've been answering them privately. That's actually something that I personally did not consider. I thought about it as you asked that question. A lot of people here are consultants. I don't know the answer. We're going to have to look into that and ask the CC and get some clarification. The original intent was I think it was different from this, right? Because sorry, in my memory, I'm thinking back to all the conversations I had with the commission specifically about this. This is already not allowed in terms of the CF1R, the responsible party being the responsible party both for the CF1R and CF3R today. That already is not allowed, but I think they're going to codify it. So I have to get back to all of you on that question. We're still trying to figure it out.
Great, thanks. And then Gina, I see you're maybe typing this, but this may be a question that a lot of folks are having some confusion around how to get the experience. And then, and Chris says specifically to get the CA, you need to have experience. And if you don't have that experience, how do you get in the mentoring program? And so that this question about how, what comes first, the chicken or egg? So I don't know if you want to answer that to the crew.
The egg comes first, and that's you. You come all by yourself, and you come with a hope, a dream, and a prayer. I want to be an energy consultant. And you don't have to have any experience. I have people that they don't even know what the energy code is, and they come into the program. So we're there to get you prepared to take the exam. It's our primary goal, but we're also there to help you be a well-rounded energy consultant who has experience. There is a lot of modeling homework every single month. Hours of modeling homework, by the way, guys. And you do that under the supervision of a CEA. And those projects can be used towards your work experience of once I've passed the exam, now I have to show I've worked on a certain amount of projects that are up to the standards of a CEA. And you can use those to submit your form saying, here are all the projects I worked on. Here's the CEA who reviewed them. Here, I've passed the exams. Make me a CEA. I'm hoping that makes sense.
That's great. Thanks, Gina. And there's kind of a bigger question, and Amy, I think this might kind of go to CEC in terms of maybe sort of the intent on this, or it could also be, David. It's asked, and it's kind of a comment. It looks like a black box would be required for all new construction. And I think that's sort of been answered, but I'm just curious if anybody else wants to sort of take a stab at expounding upon that and what that intent of this process really is. Amy or David or anybody else want to chime in on that?
I can give you my guess as to why it happened, why all of this is happening, and the goal is to make sure that nobody cheats. I think that's the primary goal. The goal is to make sure that the person designing these things isn't the one that can also tell the rater, you better pass my project or else, which is very funny to me because, I look at people like Gina and so many other energy modelers here. That's the opposite of what you would do, right? What your intent is, you want to be involved in a project because you want to see it through the end to make sure it's all compliant. So that's a outstanding question. I think it's something that we want to bring up to the commission, particularly for the companies that are smaller. If it's just you or a couple of you, that probably is a really good and important question to ask them.
Yeah, thank you. Gina, go ahead.
I just want to answer this as an energy consultant that I've had jobs go south, right? All of us have had jobs not go as smooth as we'd like them to be. I'd like to say I cherry pick my clients, but sometimes I really cherry pick one, let me tell you. And I've got one on my desk right now in which the equipment installed is not what was on the CF1R I provided. And my inspector is not letting them get their certificate of occupancy until that HERS rater gives them a completed project status report. And whereas this is making my life hell, you don't know how much I'm jumping up and down that is going on. But everyone's pointing fingers, and it can become a finger pointing game. And I just want to make sure that we're all aware of the fact that when we're in construction, there's liability involved, and we all need to be aware of that. And that liability happens the minute we are providing guidance or support on a project. And we have to think about that as individuals, and we have to think about that as companies doing this work.
Thanks, Gina. Okay, let's see. Hank asks, what happens if CO is issued and permits final without the completion of radar tests?
Well, that is exactly what we don't want to happen. So if that happens, it becomes a question to send up to the CEC enforcement office, compliance office. Hey, this is happening. Building departments are letting all these projects through without the actual HERS certificates, without energy models, and then they'll deal with it.
Yeah. Let's see, Dan asks, kind of comment and asks, is the CEC thinking only in terms of speculative developer builders? Most projects I've been involved with have an independent owner who wants to hold the general contractor accountable. The owner and the GC are two different entities. To CEC, I think they're always the same entity. So that may be a little bit of a hypothetical question. Dan, I think that's sort of a comment in there. I don't know, Amy, if you have any thoughts you want to add. I see you've come back on the camera. Not wanting to put you on the spot, but if you have any insights you want to provide to the crew.
I mean, I just have a general comment for the compliance. There is going to be a greater focus on the compliance side of things, not just for single family, but for non-resident multifamily as well. And we are working on some offering some program and assistance through our standards compliance office as well. So stay tuned because you'll be hearing more about that later through the year. Some programs that we're trying to offer to help the building departments be informed and educated and, have experts on their end, as well as making sure that, this side of things, the builders, builders, architects, designers, all have the information that they need in order for the compliance to work. So there's so many different people involved in the project, and it's trying to make sure that everybody has the right information and education in order to make the compliance happen. So it's just a bunch of things we're trying to get all work together, but definitely a larger focus on compliance for this code cycle.
Great, thank you for that. Let's see. I'm just looking here. There's some comments here, and some just thoughts. I do. One of the questions that happened early on, and this may have been answered from Fergus. When will all this new training be available for folks to jump into it?
Are we asking about the ECC training or Gina's
I know I wasn't sure what they were asking about training on the 2025 code.
Let's answer both questions. So maybe it's for the ECC training and then for the mentorship program. And anybody who might be interested in either one of those.
You want to tell them yours first?
Sure. The training that I use for the mentoring program, again, is through Energy Code ACE. We're in the process at Energy Code ACE of updating all our classes for the 2025 code. And I have to tell you, taking our classes now that are labeled 2022 is the most exciting time to take the class, because every instructor is going to go, spoiler alert, this is changing for the 2025 code. So you get a feel of what is it currently, and then how is it going to look new for 2025? Because the minute it says it's a 2020-25 class, we're not going to get all excited with spoiler alerts with you. And all our classes, we've come out with classes already. We have our What's New classes that Martin has been providing to hundreds upon hundreds of people around the state of California. And as you guys know, everything at Energy Code ACE, www.energycodeace.com, is online.
Awesome, Gina. And then David, I think it was ECC training was a specific one, but I like that.
Yeah, ECC training. I think we're shooting for somewhere between September and October. But just so everybody understands, all the training that we create has to be approved by the commission, so it can take longer. We don't know. It depends on how quickly it turns around. But that's the goal at this point.
Awesome. And sorry if there's some folks I haven't been able to get 100% of your answers. There are a couple in there, so if my panelists will take a look, but I want to turn it back to Danica. Although we have a survey and one more survey, if we want to bring that up on the screen, if that's available. Awesome. Okay, so let's a quick survey that's jumping up on here, and we're going to turn it over to Danica in a second to close us out. So first we want to make sure, how do you rate the overall thing? Do you feel better prepared? How would like you attend another 3C event? And then just give us a sense of how you like all of our presenters. That's very awesome. So we're going to maybe run that. Danica, do you want to start your section while those things are running? Great.
Yes. Yeah, as always, if you have any lingering energy code questions, 3C Run also offers a free energy code coach service to get your questions answered. And if you have any questions in receiving your AIA or ICC units, please reach out to me via email. My email is on the screen right there, and these slides will also be in your inbox in the next few days. And we have also been doing a 5-part energy code implementation series with 2025 code updates with Jennifer Rennick and Grant Murphy. We have 3 courses remaining in the series focusing on single-family additions and alterations, ADUs, and multifamily. And we also have several upcoming courses that you may be interested in to supplement your knowledge, including topics such as embodied carbon, electrification products, and a deeper dive on HERS registries. Next slide. Compiled here are energy code resources for your reference when you receive your slides in the next few days. And with that, thank you so much to all of our speakers. Thank you, Mindy, for hosting, and thank you to everyone who came today. And I also wanted to thank the team who helped make this happen. Cassie, Kate, Sarah, and the 3C Ren Events and Forum team, thank you. And I'll leave this open for any last-minute questions.
Yeah, just a quick note, Kim asked, when will the slide decks be posted? Those should be in a couple of days on the 3C Ren website. So the same place that you can see 3cren.org. There's a section for forum, and you'll be able to get all the materials there, right, Danica? Anything else on that piece?
Yes, and you will also receive it in your inbox.
Awesome. So people will not be able to miss that, hopefully.
Yes.
And you'll also be able to go onto the website. I just highly recommend getting onto that website. There's so many resources. So all of the forums that 3C Ren has held previously, we have those materials, and moving forward materials will be available. So it's a really good place to start. And if you do have more questions about talking to any of these folks you have today, 3C Ren is the place to go, because they can really connect you to that. All right, and here we are at 11, so we will let you go. And thank you so much again for your time today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye, everyone.